Hey, hey, hey.
Hello.
Sophia, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. I am so super excited that you are with me here on my channel, Unchained Faith channel. I am so excited. It's been a while. We've been talking about this. We've been planning it out, and you've agreed like off bat. So I'm super excited that you're on tonight. And I'm just going to go ahead and introduce you, and just so everyone can know who you are and what we're going to be talking about tonight. So, everyone, hello, hello. My name is Chantel. I'm your host with Unchained Faith. Welcome to my channel. And if you have not already subscribed, please do so. But tonight we want to share with you a very important topic that happens in our community, that happens in our childhood, that happens, especially in with who we are. We're Haitian Americans, and these things they happen around us, and a lot of people don't like to talk about it because of our culture. A lot of people just kind of shun away from it. So today we just want to bring awareness, and we want to talk about some of the things that happen in our culture, or some of our things that happen with sexual abuse. Okay, so we know that YouTube is a little sensitive, so we'll say S abuse, I guess. S abuse, and that way everyone will know. That way, YouTube is not going to censor it and maybe play this video, and I want this video to air so people can see it. So we have Miss Sophia. Hi, Miss Sophia.
Hello, Chantel.
We have Miss Sophia Romaine, who is with us tonight, who is my guest tonight. She's a wife, a mother, and a nurse. She currently lives in Minalo,
Mineola. Mineola.
Mineola. Oh, that was so easy for me to say. She currently lives in Mineola, Florida. She likes to encourage her family and friends to be their best selves. And this I know to be true. She is such an encourager. She likes to encourage people. She likes to motivate people. This I know to be true. And so tonight, Sophia, we're going to be talking about, I know as we've been building our relationship, um, we have been talking a lot, like from woman to woman. And from the times that we've spoken, I felt like I understood you and knew you a little bit more. And so tonight, you're going to share with us a little bit about S abuse, because you experienced this as a child in your childhood growing up. And recently, some things have changed and some things have happened. And we're going to talk about your feelings. We're going to talk about how this happened, where did it happen? Because I want people to know about these things. They're real. And I want people to know that it's okay that we talk about it, because I do believe that by talking about it, we can heal, right? So
Absolutely.
share, yeah, so share with us your experience with your first experience with S abuse, which is sexual abuse, and we're going to say S abuse. What was your first experience? Who was it? Where did it start? And then later on we'll talk about how it made you feel.
Okay. My first experience with it is when I was really young. I was most likely 3 or 4. And I can remember it was that age because I started school when I was 4. In up north, you could start, younger. And I wasn't in school yet. I was at home with my father, and he took me to a house that he owned. It was people that was renting his house, his cousins. And so he had to fix something on the roof. And so he went up on the roof and he left me inside to watch TV. So there was a male cousin that was there, and he came downstairs and he asked me to go upstairs with him. And he, abused me. And after that, he threatened me. He said, "Do not tell your parents anything." And so I was afraid of him. So I didn't tell my parents anything. And then my second experience with that type of abuse is when I was like 7 years old. Um, it was my brother's friend. He came home. He was coming home just to, spend time with my brother a few days even before that. It was like that was the conditioning part. He would come, spend time at the house, and things like that. He learned our routines and things. So it wasn't until my brother asked or told us that he was going to go to the store. He left us there with this friend. He said, "I'll be right back." The friend asked me and my siblings to wrestle. And so when we went to my brother's room, and he started wrestling under the blankets with my other brother. I have 3 siblings. And so he started wrestling with my other brother, and that was it. And then he wrestled with my sister. And then it was my turn to wrestle. And so I was under the blanket, and I saw him unzip his pants. And so it was like he was trying to penetrate me. And then I got out under the blankets. Like 10 minutes later, my oldest brother came home, and I told my brother what happened. I said, he tried to put his thing in me.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, and then he completely denied it in front of my brother. So he was around my brother's age. I was around 7. My brother was like 12. It was like child on child. When I reported it to my brother and he didn't do anything, I didn't even bother telling my parents. So that a couple weeks later, his family and my family went to the same church. I saw him at church. I went up north. The churches have basements. So I walked to the basement to go to the bathroom. And he was sitting there, and he saw me walk downstairs. And so he followed me. And I used the bathroom. I came back, I went out, and then he was like, "Oh, hey." And then he picked me up like from behind. He just picked me up, and he started swinging me around. And I said, "No, get off." But what he was like, when he was doing that, it was like he was humping me, and so that was the only 2 times he did that to me. So my third time was when I was 16, and I was on vacation in my cousin's house. And her father didn't live with her, but my aunt, she was working all the time. She was working 3 to 11, 11 to 7. And when she was home in the daytime, she was just sleeping. She didn't have time to do anything with us. So she would ask my cousin's father to take us to parks, to take us to parties and things like that. And, he was conditioning me too. And I would remember he picked us up one time and went to a party in Staten Island. Now, Brooklyn and Staten Island is like 45 to an hour away. So he was, playing these French songs in his car, these chansonnettes. And
We know them.
yeah, he's driving, and he's looking at the rear view mirror, looking at me and singing the songs. And I'm like, man, this guy's crazy. But I didn't think nothing of it. When we got to the party, he was standing there with his friends talking. And then when his friends walked away, he said, "I'm happy you're here." And he gave me a kiss on the cheek. But it's not like one of those, friendly salutating kisses. It's like he put his lips on my face. And I'm like, that was weird.
Mhm.
Still not thinking nothing that he could hurt me in that way. So I call that conditioning. It was conditioning. he probably didn't see that I stopped him. So he just kept going further and pushing his button to see where he can, where he can go. So one day my cousin says, my father is going to take us somewhere. And so he came over. I was the one that was already ready. My sister and my cousin had to go to their room to get ready. And so I'm in the front in the living room by myself, and he approaches me and he starts like kissing on my face. It's like touching my body. And I just was in shock. Like I froze. And it felt like 1,000 years the way I was in shock. But I knew it was like just a small time frame. When I came to myself, I pushed him so hard that he fell against the wall and he fell down. And when he got up, he looked at me and said, well, tell the other ones to just to come along. Like he thought I was gonna go with him. And so I went into the room. I told my cousin I'm not going nowhere with him. She asked me what happened. And I didn't tell her because her father was right there, like behind the door. I just told her I am not going nowhere with him. So eventually he left. And then she asked me what happened. And I told her what her father did to me. And she believed me. And she said, she's really sorry. Like she started getting angry at him. And, she called him and confronted him. And then he said, well, I'm sorry. And then what happened is he asked her if he could talk to me. And I said, I don't want to talk to him. And so she just put the phone on speaker while he was talking. And he said, I'm sorry. The next day he came over thinking that every water was under the bridge. He came and he said, oh, I'm going to take you guys out. And I even refused to look at him. And then I went into the room and I locked the door. He was so angry that I did that. He like forced the door open, a locked door. He forced it open and he threw money on the bed as if that's a way to shut me up.
Mm-hmm.
I told my grandma what happened, and my grandma said, well, don't tell your mother, because if you tell your mother, she won't let you come to New York to visit me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was tough. I was in New York dealing with that. And I remember calling my dad and I said, Daddy, I know that, we're not scheduled to come home another 2 weeks, but I really want to be home now. So he arranged his cousin in New Jersey to pick us up. And that's how we was able to go home. When I got home, I didn't tell my parents right away. It was like killing me inside. And it was like, I was watching an episode of Oprah. And like, I didn't understand the terms, what to say. I didn't understand what to call it. It was not until I was watching Oprah that I learned about conditioning. I learned about, the act of what you to call it. Another thing I learned, it wasn't watching Oprah, it was watching Cops. I was watching an episode of Cops and a little girl was describing to her parents what was going on. And then the cop went to the parents and said, this is what this is. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's when I learned terms. And so it's like I was in a depression at 16 years old. And it was like I was acting out and I didn't have an outlet. And I found myself like really crying like to God. And I said, I'm going to just tell my mom.
Mhm.
And so I waited until the day my mom was off, and she was washing dishes, and I was sitting in front of her. And I looked at her, and it's like I mouthed the words, but I just mouthed them. And she was like, what? I did that on purpose. I did that on purpose because I wanted to see, like, I wanted to get her attention more
Mhm.
clearly.
I understand.
And so I mouthed the words to her, and she said, what? What are you saying? And then I told her what happened. And then she said, like, she was shocked, and she kept asking me questions. And I told her, I answered all the questions she had. And then at the end, she said, well, don't worry, God will take care of it. That's what she said. And then she walked away, and she went into her room, and she got on the phone. She called my grandmother, her mother, and she was upset. And my grandmother's saying, how dare you? How you're gonna tell her not to tell me? And she called her sister, and she told her sister what happened. And from my understanding, my aunt, um, my aunt went to his house because she didn't know. I didn't tell her. She went to his house, and she was like, she let him have it. And I didn't learn that until my cousin called me later and said, so you told your mom? And I said, yes, I told my mom. And she asked me, how did my mom respond? And I told her. And then she told me how her mom responded. And till this day, this very day, my aunt is the only person that ever stood up for me in that way against him. And so I will always appreciate my aunt for that. Um, that was I mean, it was a relief to tell my mom. And my father was home too. He heard what happened. But the depression didn't go away. Like, I was really still depressed. I found myself going to an American church because the Haitian church I was going to, it was like putting salt in the wound. They didn't do anything to help me. They knew about what happened. Now, let me tell you. So the boy who abused me at 7, 8 years old. So my family moved to Florida, and when we moved to Florida, years later, his family moved to Florida. And then so he became a youth pastor. And he would come to the church and preach about molestation and rape. That's what he would preach about. So imagine me sitting there having to listen to this. So I just got up and I left. And the youth leader noticed I left. And she asked me why I'm leaving. And I told her everything. And then she told me to go back inside to listen to him, because I have to take it. That's what she said. Yeah. So the church didn't do anything for my trauma. I even talked to the pastor about it, and he was still being invited for youth Sundays to preach. So I finally left that church. And I had to go to another church, an American church, that really helped me navigate. I even met someone and they told me to start counseling. So I was able to start counseling and things like that. And it really helped me like define the terms and to give me, if I get triggered, what to do when I'm triggered. I learned also this is going to be a lifelong trauma. I'm always going to have this trauma. Even if I have Alzheimer's, when I'm 90 years old, if I have Alzheimer's, I'm still going to have this trauma. And as a nurse, I did work the lockdown unit, the memory care, people who lost their memory. And it is like things I've seen them do, they don't have their mind. They can't remember, not even their name, but
But if it's a trauma,
yeah, they remember that. They remember that. They remember that. So I learned that it's going to be a lifelong trauma and what to do with my triggers. I learned that as a mother to protect my children. My mother was always working. She was working all day, even nights.
that's what I wanted to do. How was that with your mother how was the relationship after when you told your mother? And also, I want to go back just a little bit, from the age of 4 to the age of 7, then to the age of 16. How did that make you feel as a young girl growing up? Like, did you feel like there's something that your parents could have done? Do you feel like this was their fault? How did you feel? And as to when this was happening to you? And then we can go further.
I felt unprotected.
Wow.
Unprotected as a child. And when you're unprotected and you don't feel, Haitian parents don't tell their kids they love them. So I feel unprotected. I feel unloved. And growing up, that made me have like low confidence. I can't say low self-esteem because I always viewed myself as beautiful or,
Which you are.
oh, thank you. And I viewed myself as smart and honest and things like that. I always did, but I had low confidence. I had low confidence in people. I didn't trust a lot of people that was around me because look what happened to the people who were close to me. They hurt me. So I had low confidence. How did it affect my relationship with my mother? Well, I did resent her, not because I felt like this was her fault, but I resented her because she was always working and she left us home with my brother. He didn't know any, I mean, he was 12. He didn't know any better for his age and his maturity. He didn't know that his friend was going to do that. But I wish she was home a lot more because not only that she was working full time, picking up extra shifts and all of that, she ran a store. So she was home probably like after 9 o'clock every day. So it was children in the house with a 12-year-old babysitter. And, so I do think that if I do counseling with her, it could get better. But today, like, I don't view her as my protector. And when you don't view someone as a protector, it could be even your spouse or whatever, it's hard to open up to them. It's hard to trust them. So certain situations, like, how some women, they can call their mom, mommy, what to do? I call my friend.
Wow. So how did this, now that you're a married woman, married to one of the greatest DJ of all time. My friend, he is such a humble, humble man. He is
Yes.
wonderful. So you have a very wonderful husband.
Mhm.
And how, as a married woman, did this affect you in any type of way? Did this affect you in your relationship while dating him or, being married to him? Did this affect you in any type of way?
I don't think it affected me as a wife.
Okay.
I think it affected me as a mother. So
Mm.
when I was pregnant and I had my firstborn, I was really protective of her. I didn't want anybody to really hold her for a few months after she was born. I didn't go anywhere. Like I just stayed home with her and made sure she was protected. Um, Even today, like there's certain jobs I won't take as a nurse. I won't work at the hospital because they require you to be there 12 hours. And whether it's 12 hours in the evening or 12 hours in the day, that's too much time for me to be away from my kids. Maybe until, when they get older, maybe. But even when I worked 8-hour shifts, it was like, you know, I know what time they're going to be at the bus stop. I would call and make sure that they were safe and things like that. Today, I work from home, so I could be available for my kids when they're home to protect them. But, as a wife, it didn't really affect me, like between me and my husband.
That's good.
He knows what happened to me. I told him,
That's great.
and he gives it to me. He says, however you want, he gave me the reins over the kids because he knows about my past. And he's like, just take those reins. Um, he's fine with it.
Good. That's very good. I think it's really, really good to have a husband that supports you. Oftentimes, I've seen and I know of some women that go through some very tough things in their childhood, some very tough trauma, whether it's not in their childhood or not. Sometimes it could just be in a past relationship that was very traumatizing. And then they get with this new guy, and this guy uses that against them and throws it in their face and belittles them on top of what they've already experienced. So it's always good to be honest and open with your spouse, letting them know what you went through, what could be some possible triggers, and before having children, how you want to raise your children so we're all on one accord. I've heard so many different stories about um, you know, especially the Haitian homes, and I'm sure it happens not just in the Haitian homes, but the parents are constantly working, children is raising children, and there's a lot of abuse that is going on, whether it's from uncle, family of the friends of the family, whether it's from your sibling friends. There's a lot of these things, and sometimes we can't even present them to our parents because they want to keep the peace oftentimes. And when they're wanting to keep the peace, it's causing their child to be hurt. And oftentimes they want to keep the peace because they were victims when they were a child and they
Right.
weren't able to speak up. And so a lot of times these things can be very traumatizing. I do completely understand, and kudos to your husband for being that support system for you.
Mhm.
And how is your self-esteem today? I know you talked about your confidence and you talked about how, you know, you always believe in yourself. You're a beautiful woman, more power to you, Black women power. And but your confidence in people. But how is your self-esteem today? How is your self-esteem with just the overall with that past trauma? How is your self-esteem with that today?
With my past trauma, you know,
Like,
my
for
self,
example, Sorry, just to give you an example, like, are you more conservative? I notice you're very conservative with your dressing. You're very modest. You're very modest. So with when I say self-esteem, like, what are some of the things that you probably have been afraid to do because this may bring you back, or what are some of the things that you won't do because of what you've been through?
So I think um, when a few years ago, when I was single and had no kids, I did used to dress provocative. I'll send you pictures later. But but I think after I became a mom, I put that, away because I wanted to be like an example for my children. So, but my self-esteem today, I view myself, I keep affirmations. So
Yeah.
even, we all go through those days, but I keep affirmations and I tell myself I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm a good mother, I'm a great wife, and so I just put that in the atmosphere and I allow God to God showed me my value. He like I had to go to, spend a lot of time in prayer. That's what helped me a lot. Even when I went
Amen.
to see, I went to see, a counselor, and the doctor that saw me, he said, you know, I've seen patients who have like done far worse, like in psych wards off of one person. And he was like, you had, three predators. And he was shocked and amazed that I am where I am. He said he was impressed that I could keep a job. I guess a lot of victims that went through that, um, they become unstable. He said, keep a job. It looks like you're a good wife and mother, maintain your household. So when I think about where I could have been and where I am now, I just give all glory to God.
Amen.
I had to spend a lot of time in prayer. 20, 2007 was the year I felt like I was going through a lot left and right, like every area was hard. And 2007, I dedicated that year to be in God's presence, his face and everything. And that was really what kept me victorious.
Amen. You know, God to me is always that fountain, right? It is
Mhm.
that fresh water when you think that things are impossible and when we feel like it's over, unrestorable. Just there is power in
Mhm.
Jesus. There is power
Yes,
in the
there is.
word. There is power in the relationship with God. And a lot
Mhm.
of people say, well, what benefit or what do I get out of this? But there is power. There
Mhm.
is power in him. And I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to describe it, but there is power. There is something that just reading and having that relationship with God that just kind of melts away those layers of hurt and shame, of embarrassment, of feeling inadequate. There's power in that, and that's important that you kind of shared that. So I want you to tell me today. I know that you are a woman of God, you love your children, you love your husband, and you go to church. And so tell me where you're at today with church, because I know that part of this happened to you with someone that was in the church, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so oftentimes we would think just our families are not good with helping us deal with these type of abuse, but in the church they're even worse. And this is something that you and I we have to come back on and do another live um, you do another recording so we can talk about, you know, the church factor. So
Yes.
tell me, before we close out, just tell me a little bit about the church factor. Where are you today in church? How are you in church today with what happened to you? And how do you feel about the possibility that sometimes we can be in church with someone, either their past was that way or their present may be that way?
Mhm.
How do you, what would you like to say about that?
So, like I said, I was a part of it. It was a Haitian church, and they didn't take my concerns seriously. And that bothered me to the point where I found myself crying a lot every night because I felt like no one defended me. Here I am, um, explaining something to the pastor, and it was like one ear out the other. And so I had ultimately my decision was to leave. And they thought I left, you know, because I got pregnant. And I'm like, no, that wasn't the case. So I let them, you know, think of when they seen that I wasn't pregnant, they didn't even bother asking why did I leave. But the church I am part of today, I don't know if I could say the name, but I am
No,
proud.
no, no names.
Okay, I'm a proud member to be in that church, and I'll tell you
Amen.
why. Because my pastor there was a situation in our church with a member who eventually got arrested for touching on children, and um it was that whole thing was a triggering thing.
We're gonna say allegedly.
uh,
Oh,
well, it's convicted, so
oh,
I mean,
oh, okay.
he's in prison, so
Okay. So,
convicted.
okay, okay.
Yeah. Mhm. So with that situation, because he would come to the church, and with the victims he would come, and it was awkward, but um I text my pastor because with the man who is in prison now, I remember something he told me so distinctly. He told me, I wanted to come, I wanted to be, you know, come to the church and start working with the youth. And he told me, my pastor told him, not just anybody can come in and work with our children. He said, first of all, you have to pass a background check. You have to go, there's a process.
Yeah.
And even after all of that, it's still not a green light to work with the children. And so when certain things came to light about this individual, I text my pastor. I said, Pastor, I told him the conversation that I had with the man, and I told him, thank you, because I can feel great now leaving my kids in children's church just because of his protocol, just because of, you know, of his process with allowing adults working with the children. And not only that, but my pastor spoke at a service, and he said, if your children come to you and tell you X, Y, and Z, or who ABC touched me, believe them. And that resonated with me really hard because, you know, out of my whole experience, I just wanted someone to believe me. I wanted the adults that was responsible for me to believe me. Children don't lie about certain things. They don't lie about that. They might lie about taking a quarter from your purse or stealing a cookie from the cookie jar. They might do
From the
that.
cookie jar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they don't usually, I'm talking about children. You
Yes.
do not lie about that.
About stuff like that.
And it takes a lot of guts to even say it. So if your children do tell you that, just believe them. It took me years to tell my mom what happened. I told my mom, you know, I never even told my mom about what happened to me at 4 years old until last year. I told her about what happened to me when I was 16, about her sister's husband. I told her about that, but I didn't tell her everything. I didn't tell her this until last year. Because, if I see that you didn't do anything for this individual who's in your family, then I don't think you was gonna do anything about anybody else. But anyway, I'm getting off track, but I'm just saying, I am a proud member of this church because of that, because my pastor took a stand against it. And a lot of pastors don't.
They don't. They don't, because they're fearful that the church will fall apart. They're fearful. There's a lot of things that plays when things like this happen. And unfortunately, things like this, they happen a lot, and they mostly happen in the church sector. In the church sector, whether it's a Haitian church, American church, doesn't matter. It usually happens in the church sector. And so kudos to that pastor. I know who he is. He does have very strong morals about a lot of things. He's very firm, a young pastor, but very firm on a lot of things. I just love that. I was privileged to be under his leadership at one point. This was way before you came to the church. So I'm the true,
throwback member.
And he's very real. He's very honest. And if he's going to sit you down, he's going to sit you down. And you'll know why he sits you down, and it's all out of love. And he really wants to correct and help people. And so I truly understand that made a difference for you. And it is important, viewers, that you know that your children is your first priority. And when your children tell you something, believe them. Also, you want to make sure that whatever your children is at, whether it's school, whether it's church, whether it's YMCA after school programs, whatever it is, that your children, the people that are taking care of your children, are having proper background checks, are not just any type of people with these abuse records that are dealing with your children, even people that come into your home. So, Ms. Romaine, I do want us to get back on, because I want to share with you what happened with me in the church. So we will definitely do a part 2. And then I want to share with what, had happened to my daughter. And I was able to, when she was little, and things that I was able to see. And so next time when we come back on, and you don't know this, I'm just scheduling it for you now, that we will come on and do a part 2. I will share what happened to me and how my parents handled it. And then I will share with what happened to my daughter and how I was able to handle that as well as a parent. So just so before we end, I really truly appreciate, this time that you spent with me, and for you to share your story with everyone that is watching you. And I pray that this encourages someone to kind of step out of their shell, to share or to seek counseling if they're still traumatized by it. And just know that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And oftentimes, our next interview as well, we'll talk about what happens to these ladies. Some ladies, they overcome it, but some never do, and they fall victim to it, where this sometimes causes them to be promiscuous, and it causes them not to forgive themselves. And we want to talk about that as well. So before we end, what would be your advice that you would like to give to women, to give to mothers? What would be your final advice that you would like to give them?
Speak up. If it happened to you, say something. If you are a mother, protect your children. Don't leave your children with your boyfriend. Don't leave your children with your girlfriend. Girls do it too. I mean, women do it too.
Okay.
Don't leave your children with just anybody. Do your ultimate best to protect them. If anything happens to them and they say something to you, believe them, and take action to protect them. That way it don't happen again.
That's right. That's wonderful. That is so good. Thank you so much, Ms. Romaine, for sharing with us today. That was wonderful. Remember, I've already claimed you to do a part two because I
Part
think
2 and 3.
okay, good. Because this is so good, and it's so good that our people knows about this. It's so good that everyone knows about this because this still goes on today.
Yes.
There's still things that go on today. And oftentimes people want to shut you up, whether it's in the church, whether it's family members at home. When it happens to you, you need to be quiet and don't say anything about it. And that's not going to happen here. Here on this channel, we're going to talk about it, and we want to expose it, and we want women to know that it's okay to share. It's okay to share your story, and don't feel shameful about it. Because let me tell you something, oftentimes when you're shameful about something, it will oftentimes, and God forbid, it will happen to your children. When you like to hide things, it will oftentimes happen to your children when you don't break that cycle and break the curse.
That's
Break
right.
the cycle.
Mhm.
Stay tuned, everyone, because I want to share with you what happened to me as a teenager growing up in the church, because I've been in the church all my life. And I'm going to share with you what I talk about when I talk about cycles. If you don't break the cycle, if you don't stop it, it will continue. It will happen to your children's children. It will happen to your children because you decide not to speak and you kept your mouth quiet.
That's
And
right.
because when you keep quiet, that means that you're not looking out for your children. That means that
Mhm.
you're not looking to see who these predators are, and they're out there.
Mhm.
So we could go on forever and ever about this, but thank you so much, beautiful Miss Romaine, for
Oh,
being
thank
with us
you, Miss
tonight. And
Chantel.
we would definitely schedule something else. We would definitely do a part two. And viewers, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you so much. And remember that I love you, but God loves you more. Mwah. Blow a kiss. Blow a kiss. Blow a
Bye.
kiss. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Oh my gosh.